She's a doctor and you're just a Target cashier. My dad spat, so I went silent for 4 years and came back owning 5 properties and their retirement plan. Friendly PSA, if you're going to treat one of your kids like garbage while worshipping the other one, maybe make sure the disappointing one isn't secretly building a real estate empire. My parents learned this lesson the hard way, and boy was it satisfying to watch. I, 28, male, have been getting shit on by my family since basically forever. My parents never tried to hide the fact that they had a favorite kid, and it wasn't me. Growing up it was always. Celia got straight A's again and Celia got into the honors program, while my report cards barely got a glance. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't a bad student, solid B's with some A's mixed in, but I wasn't the academic superstar my sister was. I was more of a hands-on guy. While Celia was memorizing biology textbooks, I was the kid taking apart old computers and rebuilding them or helping our neighbor fix his deck to earn some cash. My dad was always big on status and appearances. He worked as a mid-level manager at some corporate office, always talking about getting a promotion that never seemed to materialize. Dude literally had a whole collection of motivational posters in his home office with shit like persistence and excellence, ironic, since he'd been stuck in the same position for like a decade. Mom was a high school teacher who spent most of her time bragging about her gifted daughter to her coworkers. Meanwhile, I was the kid who got a "that's nice, honey," when I won the school's woodworking competition. Not even a congratulations, just a half-assed acknowledgement. Before they went back to discussing Celia's latest academic achievement. When college time came around, Celia got into this fancy private university with a partial scholarship. My parents took out loans, drained savings, did whatever it took to send her there. They even remortgaged the house, which I only found out years later. When it was my turn. 2 years later, the conversation was basically, community college has perfectly fine programs and you can work to pay for it yourself. Message received loud and clear. The day Celia officially got that doctor in front of her name, she walked into our parents' house waving her diploma and her offer letter from some fancy hospital. From that exact moment I basically stopped existing to them, except as a punching bag. My parents never really tried to hide their favoritism, but after that day they didn't just favor her, they started actively shitting on me. I still remember this family dinner where my dad straight up told me she's a doctor saving lives and you're just scanning groceries at Target. I just stared at him thinking, who say this to their son? But he didn't stop there. He leaned back in his chair, smirked and said, honestly, Marcus, if Celia didn't exist, we'd have no one to be proud of. At least one of our kids turned out to be worth something. He didn't even flinch, just kept eating, like he hadn't just called his own son worthless with his whole chest. My mom laughed so hard she had to wipe her eyes. Then she chimed in, don't be so dramatic. He just means we can't exactly brag about someone who stocks shelves. Celia didn't even try to stop them. She seemed to enjoy the show. She just sat there with this smug little smile sipping her sparkling water, like she was too good for all of us. I kept thinking about how I'd fixed her laptop for free just the week before, when she'd spilled coffee all over it. Funny how my useless skills were suddenly valuable when she needed them. After that it became their favorite pastime to rip into me every holiday, birthday, random Sunday dinner, whatever. If I ever mentioned anything about my job or what I was doing, my parents would roll their eyes. My mom would say shit like maybe someday you'll do something that matters, and my dad would just sigh and shake his head. The worst part, my parents had this framed wall in the hallway they called the Family Achievement Wall. It had about 20 photos of Celia graduating med school, getting her first white coat, standing with some important doctor, and literally one photo of me. It was my high school graduation picture and I swear they only included it because my grandparents called them out for not having any pictures of me at all. Celia got worse over time. Marcus the minimum wager, she called me in front of our extended family once, put that on your name tag. When she bought her BMW, my parents wouldn't shut up about it, constantly asking when I'd upgrade from that beater. I drive a 2009 Civic that runs perfectly fine. When she bought her condo, they asked when I'd stop living like a broke college kid. When she went on vacations to Europe, they'd remind me that people with real careers get to travel. One Christmas my dad literally gave me a book called From Mediocrity to Success. Finding Your Path. Like as my actual present in front of everyone, my uncle choked on his eggnog. I tried different approaches. I stayed quiet, I defended myself, I skipped visits. Nothing changed. The second I walked through their door I was back to being their favorite target. The only people who ever stood up for me were my grandparents. My grandpa once told my dad to back off after a particularly nasty comment, saying that boy works harder than you know, Gene. My dad just scoffed and said we're only teasing. My grandma, June, would always pull me aside and tell me she was proud of me no matter what, but it didn't change the overall dynamic. By the way, my grandpa was the only one who ever really got me. He was a carpenter his whole life, built things with his hands, just like I like to do. He used to say, some people build with their minds, others with their hands. Both types build the world we live in. He gave me my first tool set when I was 12, showed me how to fix things instead of replacing them. Things turned out to be way more valuable than anyone in my family realized. Celia stayed the golden child. I was the disappointment they wished would finally grow up. What none of them knew was that I'd been quietly building something on the side. 3 years ago I scraped together enough for a down payment on a rundown duplex, fixed it up myself on weekends, rented both units, used that income to leverage another property then another. I never told them what was the point. They'd just find some way to make it about Celia. The only person who knew the real me was my girlfriend, Nina. She's my biggest fan, quiet, smart as hell and sees right through people's bullshit. I never brought her to meet my family. I knew exactly what they'd say about a bookstore girl. My mom would probably ask her when she was planning to get a real job or make some comment about how Celia dated a neurosurgeon once. But Nina's been my rock through all this. She knows everything, sees everything and never once asked me to prove myself to her. One night, after a particularly brutal family dinner where my dad suggested I shadow Celia at the hospital to see what real work looks like, Nina helped me realize something important. You know why your parents' approval matters so much to your sister, she asked because she has nothing else, no real friends, no hobbies, no life outside of being the successful daughter. You have a whole life they know nothing about. That's your power. She was right and that power was about to become very, very real. So about 2 years into Celia's reign as family royalty, little cracks started showing. First it was small things, cancelled visits, shorter calls with my parents. Then at Thanksgiving dinner she mentioned her husband. Brad couldn't make it because of work stuff. My parents immediately jumped in to defend him, saying how important his job as a financial analyst was, shooting me, looks like, unlike some people at this table. What she didn't tell them was that Brad had actually moved out 3 weeks earlier. I only found out because I ran into him at a gym and he was upset enough to spill that they were separating. He said something that stuck with me, your sister cares more about your parents' approval than her own happiness. Apparently she'd been working so many hours trying to be the superstar doctor her parents expected that their marriage had completely fallen apart. Brad said she'd missed anniversaries, birthdays, even a planned vacation they'd already paid for all because she couldn't bear to disappoint her bosses or, more importantly, her parents. I didn't say anything about it to my family, wasn't my business to share, but I did notice the designer bags under her eyes at family gatherings, the way she checked her phone obsessively, like she was waiting for bad news, classic signs of someone whose perfect life was starting to crack at the edges. 3 months later, Celia showed up to my grandparents' anniversary party alone, announced the divorce was final, and my parents immediately went into damage control. These things happen to busy professionals, my mom said, glaring at me like somehow I was responsible. My dad added, at least she accomplished something before the setback. I almost laughed out loud. Only my family could turn a divorce into another opportunity to take shots at me. That night my grandpa pulled me aside and said, you notice how they never ask how you're really doing? Marcus. That's their loss. You keep building your life quietly. The loud ones burn out. First he had no idea how right he was. Over the next year, Celia started showing up to family events looking exhausted. The hospital stories became less enthusiastic. She started chugging energy drinks at dinners. My parents either didn't notice or pretended not to. They were too busy using her accomplishments as ammunition against me. When was the last time you got a promotion at Target? My mom asked during Christmas dinner. I just shrugged and said, I'm doing all right. Doing all right isn't the same as succeeding. My dad jumped in. Your sister works 80-hour weeks saving lives. I noticed Celia flinch slightly but say nothing. I just nodded and changed the subject. What they didn't know was that I had just closed on my 4th property, a small apartment building that had nearly doubled my monthly cash flow. But I kept my mouth shut. I'd learned long ago that nothing I accomplished would ever matter to them. There was this one day when I was working on my latest property, a 4-unit building that needed serious plumbing work. I was under the sink fixing a leak. When my phone rang it was my dad, Marcus. He said, not even bothering, with, hello, we need you to switch weekends for your grandmother's birthday. Celia has an important conference she needs to attend, so we're moving the celebration to the following weekend. Not, can you? But we need you to. Like my time wasn't valuable, like I could just rearrange my schedule for Celia again. Actually I can't. I said, tightening a pipe fitting. I've got work, Target please. Like you're so important they can't survive a day without you. It's not like you're running the company. I took a deep breath. Not Target. I said other work. What other work? He sounded genuinely confused, like he couldn't imagine me doing anything but scanning groceries. Just projects. I said vaguely, I'm committed already. He sighed, that signature disappointed. Dad sigh, this is family, Marcus. I don't understand why you can't be more accommodating, like your sister. I almost told him. Then, almost said, actually, Dad, I'm in the middle of fixing up a property that'll net me more money this month than you make in 3. But I bit my tongue. The time wasn't right. Nina came with me to Christmas Eve at my grandparents' house, the only family event I actually enjoyed. My grandma June took to her immediately, whispering to me later, that girl sees the real. You don't let her go. My parents had no clue Nina even existed. I kept those worlds completely separate. At that time Celia was barely holding it together. She'd switched hospitals twice, started complaining about patient loads, administrative bullshit, insurance paperwork my parents would immediately shut her down with. But you're making great money, honey, that's what matters. I watched her smile tighten every time. I almost felt bad for her. She started showing up to family stuff and her scrubs claimed she didn't have time to change. Her perfect makeup became non-existent. Her designer clothes got replaced with whatever was comfortable. But my parents were so invested in the image of their successful doctor-daughter that they just kept bragging about her to anyone who would listen. The breaking point came at my dad's 60th birthday dinner. My parents had chosen some expensive restaurant and spent the whole night talking about the European cruise they were planning. When my dad opened his presents, Celia handed him an envelope with first-class flight upgrades. Only the best for you guys, she said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Later, when she went to the bathroom, my mom leaned over to me and said, see what a thoughtful, successful daughter does. When are you going to contribute anything to this family? I just took a sip of water and said, everyone contributes differently. I guess my dad snorted some more than others. My grandma June heard this and said sharply to my mom, that boy has never asked you for a dime since he was 18. Maybe think about that before you start tallying up contributions. My parents just rolled their eyes, but I noticed Celia had returned and heard everything. For the first time ever I saw something like doubt cross her face. That night I found her sitting alone on my parents' back porch staring at nothing. I almost walked away. We weren't exactly close anymore, but something made me sit down next to her. You okay? I asked. She didn't look at me. Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life? It was such an unexpected question that I didn't have an immediate response, because sometimes she continued. I look around and wonder how I got here. When did I decide this was what I wanted? Didn't you always want to be a doctor? I asked, genuinely curious. She shrugged. I wanted to make mom and dad proud. Being a doctor was the clearest path to that. She looked at me finally, you're the smart one, you know. I laughed. Pretty sure that's not what our parents would say. That's because they don't see it. She said. You figured out early that their approval wasn't worth chasing. I'm just realizing it now and I've already given up everything. Before I could respond, my mom called us back inside for cake. Celia plastered on her fake smile and went back to being the perfect daughter. But something had shifted. I could feel it. A few nights later, my phone buzzed close to midnight. It was Celia. I stared at the screen for a second. We don't usually talk, not unless someone needed something, but this time felt different. I answered. She was crying, not just sniffling, but full-on sobbing. Marcus, I fucked up. She choked out. I really fucked up. This wasn't the first time she'd called me out of the blue. About 8 months earlier she called asking if she could borrow $5,000 for what she called a temporary cash flow problem. I didn't ask questions, just sent it and told her to pay me back. Whenever she never did what's wrong. I asked. Sitting up in bed, Nina stirred beside me, opening her eyes. I lost my job. She whispered, like saying it out loud, made it real 3 months ago. I was silent for a moment. Why didn't you tell anyone? Are you kidding? Tell mom and dad I failed. After everything, ... She trailed off. I thought I'd find something else quickly. I have applications everywhere, but nothing's coming through and I'm out of options. What have you been living on? I asked, though I was starting to put the pieces together. That's when the dam broke through sobs. She admitted she'd blown through her savings, maxed out credit cards, taken loans from friends and now was facing eviction from her fancy condo. Her BMW was already gone, repossessed last month. She'd been Ubering to interviews and telling our parents she was having car trouble. Her voice got smaller when she admitted the real kicker. My parents had no idea. They think everything's fine. I asked, worse. She said they keep asking me for things. That's when she told me what had really been happening these past few years. Every vacation my parents took, Celia paid for it, the renovations to their house, Celia, Dad's new car, Celia, the weekly dinners at expensive restaurants, all on her dime. They never said they couldn't afford it, she explained. They just expected it like it was my duty, since I was doing so well. At first I thought I was just being generous, but now you're broke, I finished for her. Yeah, she whispered, and I have nowhere to go. I should have told her to figure it out herself. After years of looking down on me, joining in on my parents' jokes at my expense, treating me like I was beneath her, I had every right to hang up. Instead I said I manage a duplex on Westfield. The smaller unit is empty. You can stay there until you figure things out. The truth was I didn't just manage that duplex, I owned it and 4 other properties, but she didn't need to know that. There was a long silence before she finally said, "Why would you help me after everything?" I thought about it for a moment because I'm not them. When I hung up, Nina rolled over and looked at me. "You sure about this?" "No," I admitted, "but it feels like the right move." She smiled slightly. "This is why I love you. You're nothing like they think you are." What I didn't tell Nina was the small part of me that enjoyed the irony, the family disappointment, bailing out the golden child, the minimum wage target cashier, providing housing for the doctor. There was a certain poetic justice to it all. The next morning I got up early and went to the duplex to get it ready. It was nothing fancy, a small 2-bedroom unit with dated but functional appliances. I'd been planning to renovate it next month before putting it back on the rental market, but it was clean and everything worked. I stocked the fridge with some basics, made sure the utilities were on and left a spare key under the mat. As I was checking the smoke detectors, I found myself thinking about how different my life could have been if I'd chased my parents' approval the way Celia had. I might be the one calling her for help instead of the other way around. The thought made me shudder. Celia showed up the next day with 3 suitcases and red eyes. For someone who always looked perfect, she was a mess. I gave her the keys to the unit and a basic rundown of the place. "It's not fancy," I warned her. "Nothing like your condo, it's a roof." She said quietly. "That's all I need right now." I didn't tell her that the property manager she'd be paying her reduced rent to was actually me. As far as she knew, I was just the connection that got her the place. I figured the less she knew about my situation the better. The first day she was there, I noticed her sitting on the small concrete patio staring at her phone. I was stopping by to fix a cabinet door that wasn't closing properly. "Everything okay with the place?" I asked. She looked up startled. "Yeah, it's fine, I'm just job hunting." I nodded and went to work on the cabinet. After a few minutes of awkward silence she spoke again. "Hey, Marcus, could you look at my resume? I feel like I'm missing something. I've applied to 20 places and only got 2 callbacks." It was such a surreal moment. My entire life, Celia had been the one with all the answers, the one who knew exactly how to succeed. Now she was asking me, the family screw-up, for career advice. "Sure," I said, trying to hide my surprise, "send it over." Later that night I reviewed her resume. It was impressive on paper, top medical school, prestigious residency years at well-known hospitals, but it was also generic. Nothing about her stood out from the thousands of other qualified doctors looking for work. I sent her back a marked-up version with suggestions focusing on specific achievements, quantifying results, highlighting unique skills. Basic stuff I'd learned from my own journey, but things she'd never had to think about before. Her career had always been on the fast track until it derailed. "This is actually really helpful," she texted back. "Where did you learn all this?" "Some of us have to work for opportunities." I replied simply. Nina was skeptical at first. "She's going to figure it out eventually," she pointed out. Maybe, I admitted, but I'm not ready for that conversation yet. My parents found out Celia had moved within days. My mom called first, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Marcus, honey, I heard your sister is staying at some apartment you found for her." That was thoughtful. No thanks, no acknowledgement that I'd helped when they hadn't, just surprised that I could be useful for once. "Yeah, she needed a place." I said simply, "Well, your father and I think she should come stay with us. Instead, she needs to be with family during this temporary setback." I almost laughed. "Did you ask her what she wants?" "Well, no, but maybe try that," I suggested, and hung up. My dad called. Next, more direct, "Marcus, your mother and I think Celia should stay with us. This situation is just temporary, while she sorts out some work stuff." Oh, what happened with her job? I asked innocently. There was a pause. She's between positions, very normal in the medical field. Anyway, we have plenty of room here. Did she tell you she wants to stay with you? Another pause. Well, no, but we're her parents. Like I said to Mom, maybe ask her what she wants. What I was piecing together was that Celia hadn't told them the full story. She knew she'd moved and was staying in a place I'd arranged, but they didn't know she was flat broke, jobless, and had been for months. A week later I stopped by to fix a leaky faucet in Celia's unit, something I could have called a plumber for, but I wanted to check on her. She was on the phone in the kitchen speaking quietly, but not quietly enough. Mom. I can't ask him for that. She was saying, her voice tense. I couldn't hear my mother's response. But Celia's side told me, enough. No, I don't know how much he makes. Yes, I know he's helping me with rent already. No, I don't think he has savings like that. I froze in the hallway. Were they seriously talking about hitting me up for money after years of treating me like I was worthless, Mom? He's a Target cashier. Celia hissed. He can't just. No, I understand you guys are struggling without. Yes, I know I used to help, but that was all I needed to hear. I didn't burst in or make a scene, I just quietly went back to fixing the faucet. When she came out of the kitchen she looked startled to see me. How long have you been here? She asked, her voice slightly panicked. Long enough, I replied without looking up from the sink. If they send you to ask me for money, you're out of here. That clear? She didn't argue. She just nodded and left the room. That night I told Nina everything. She wasn't surprised. She said my parents had been using Celia for years and now they were trying to shift that burden onto me. But the difference was I saw it coming. I mentioned that they had no clue. I could actually help if I wanted to. The business had brought in over $20,000 last month alone. Nina just squeezed my hand and said, that's exactly why I was winning. They didn't even know who I really was. A few days later I saw Celia coming back from a job interview. Before heading in, she told me she'd made it clear to our parents that she wasn't asking me for money. They weren't thrilled. She said they couldn't understand why she'd rather stay in this so-called dump than move in with them. I asked her what she thought and she paused, looked around at the modest duplex, then said she was finally starting to understand why I chose to do things my way. About a month into Celia's stay, my grandparents called and invited me to dinner at their place. Bring Nina, my grandma said. And your sister is coming too. Something in her tone made me suspicious. Who else? A pause. Your parents asked to join us. I almost declined right there, but my grandpa got on the phone. Marcus, I think you should come. Trust me on this one. When Nina and I arrived, everyone was already there. My parents looked tense. Celia looked miserable. My grandparents exchanged a look when we walked in that I couldn't quite read. Dinner started awkwardly. My parents kept trying to pull Nina into conversation. Suddenly interested in her now that they'd realized she was my serious girlfriend, a bookstore. How quaint, my mom said, eyeing Nina's outfit, like she was mentally calculating the fabric cost. I'm not sure that's fulfilling. Do they let you sit and read all day, or is there actual work involved? Nina just smiled and said she loved books, unfazed. My dad chuckled, hey, as long as someone's bringing in money, right? Then he turned to Nina and added, bet you weren't expecting to date a Target cashier. You must really be into charity work. They both laughed like they'd just delivered a zinger at open mic night. And how long have you two been together? He asked, still grinning. 2 years, next month. Nina replied. My parents blinked like they just heard we were secretly married with 3 kids. My mom tilted her head and said, 2 years and still going strong. That's admirable. I mean, not everyone would have the patience for someone still finding his path. Then came the questions about where we lived. I kept it vague. We have a place, but of course that wasn't enough. East Side, my mom repeated when I finally gave a little more. Oh well, it's nice that you're making it work with what you've got. I'm sure it has character. You must really love each other. My dad snorted. Must be that handyman charm, built her some shelves and boom, true love. Nina kept her smile, but I felt her grip tighten slightly under the table after dinner. My dad cleared his throat dramatically, like he was about to give a toast or stage an intervention. I knew whatever was coming next wasn't going to be anything good, Marcus. We wanted to talk to you about something important, he began. As you know, family needs to stick together during difficult times. My mom jumped in. Your sister has been going through a career transition and it's put some temporary strain on all of us. I noticed they were careful, not to say financial strain or admit Celia was unemployed, still keeping up appearances. For years Celia has been so generous with us. My dad continued. She's helped us enjoy our retirement, make some home improvements, travel a bit, and now it's time for you to step up. My mom added, looking directly at me, we've always been there for you, Marcus. We put food on the table, clothes on your back, sent you to school. I almost laughed. I'd been financially independent since 18, worked through community college myself, never asked them for a dime. What are you asking for exactly? I said, keeping my voice neutral. My parents exchanged a look. Well, my dad said we have some expenses coming up. The house needs a new roof and your mother's car is having issues. So you want me to pay for those things? I clarified. My mom looked offended. We're not asking for handouts, Marcus. We're just saying that family supports each other. Celia has always understood that. I glanced at my sister who was staring down at her plate. She wouldn't meet my eyes. How much? I asked simply. My dad bluntly said about 20,000 would help us get through the next few months. The room went silent. $20,000 from their Target cashier, son. I sat down my fork carefully and you think I have that kind of money? Well, not all at once, obviously. My mom said quickly, but Celia mentioned, you've been doing some property management on the side. Surely you have some savings. I looked at Celia who finally met my eyes. She looked ashamed. I didn't tell them anything specific, she said quietly, they just wouldn't stop asking. I nodded slowly then turned back to my parents. Let me get this straight, for years you've made fun of my job, called me a failure, compared me to Celia at every opportunity. You've belittled everything I've done, never bothered to ask about my life, didn't even know I've had a girlfriend for 2 years and now you want me to give you money. Now that's not fair. My dad started. My grandpa cut him off. Actually, I think it's perfectly fair. Everyone turned to look at him. My grandpa rarely intervened in family disputes. You and your wife have spent years treating Marcus like he's beneath you. He continued. June and I have watched it happen. We've said our piece about it many times, but you never listened. My grandma nodded. You dismissed his work, his choices, his path, and now you want his help after everything. And then my dad went there. Look, Marcus. He said, voice dripping with contempt masked as concern. It's not like you're married or raising a family or building a real career. You're nearly 30, still clocking hours at Target and playing handyman on weekends. Nina's clearly a sweet girl, but I honestly don't understand what she sees in a man with no real direction. At some point you've got to grow up and do something that actually counts. That's when I decided it was time. I'd kept my life secret for years, protecting myself from their judgment, but maybe it was time they understood exactly who they'd been mocking all this time. I didn't flinch, I just looked at him. You want to know something funny, Dad? That duplex Celia's living in, I don't manage it. I own it. My mom's eyebrows shot up. In fact, I continued. I own 5 properties now. That side gig you mentioned has been my real focus for years. Target is just where I go a few days a week for steady insurance and to keep expectations low. My dad's mouth was literally hanging open. Last month, after expenses, my properties brought in just over $20,000. I said that's not counting the equity I'm building. My portfolio is worth about $1.8 million now, with loans against it, of course, but still the look on their faces was almost worth the years of ridicule. You know that beater car you're always making fun of? I keep it because it's reliable and paid off. I could buy a new car in cash tomorrow if I wanted to. I just don't care about flashy shit the way you do. My mom was stuttering now, but you never said anything. Why would you keep this from us? Because nothing I ever did was good enough for you. I replied calmly. So I stopped trying to prove myself. I built my life quietly on my terms. And here's something else you don't know, I said. Turning to my grandparents, I've been paying Walter and June's rent for the past year and covering their health insurance gap payments. My parents' heads whipped toward my grandparents who were smiling softly. Marcus insisted, my grandma said. We told him we were fine, but he wouldn't hear it. And there's one more thing, my grandpa added. Last month we made Marcus the trustee of our estate. If my parents looked shocked before, now they looked absolutely thunderstruck. What does that mean? My dad demanded. It means, my grandpa said calmly, that Marcus makes the financial decisions for us now and whatever's left when we're gone goes where he thinks it should go. This is absurd. We're your children. My dad slammed his hand on the table. And Marcus is our grandson who actually takes the time to check on us. My grandma replied, when was the last time you came by without needing something, Jean? My mom turned to me, her face unreadable. You've been hiding all this from us. Why? I looked at her steadily. Why would I tell you? So you could ask for money sooner, so you could pretend to be proud of me. Only after I became financially successful. I shook my head, no, thanks. Then I said the words I'd been holding back for years. Funny. You always said I'd never amount to anything in this family and now I'm the one who signs the checks. My dad stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You've turned my own parents against me. No, my grandma said firmly, your behavior did that all on your own. My mom turned to Celia, clearly expecting her to say something in their defense. But my sister just looked at them and said softly, they used me too, Mom. My dad's face went purple, used you. We supported you. We bragged about you, You paraded me around like a trophy. Celia interrupted and then expected me to fund your lifestyle because I was doing so well. You never once asked if I was happy. My dad started sputtering about ungrateful children, while my mom dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, going for the sympathy angle. Neither of them was actually listening to what we were saying. I think we're done here. I said, standing up. I looked at my grandparents, thank you for dinner. As Nina and I headed for the door, I heard my dad call after me. So that's it. You're just going to walk away when your family needs you. I turned back one hand on the doorknob. That's exactly what you taught me to do. After the dinner showdown, I went completely. No contact, blocked my parents' numbers, email, everything. No more drive-by guilt trips, no more fake check-ins. Nina and I even changed our locks and added cameras because, knowing them, a pop-in wasn't out of the question. Celia stayed in the duplex a bit longer, eventually landing that community clinic job. She mentioned she's not rolling in cash anymore, but she told me it's the first time she actually feels like she's doing something that matters for herself, not just for the applause. We talk now, not every day, but enough. The dynamic has completely flipped. She listens, asks for advice, respects what I've built. We're not best friends or anything, but there's peace there for once. As for my parents, well, after I iced them out, they tried going through Celia to mediate. She shut that down fast, told them flat out that I was done and they had no one to blame but themselves. My dad apparently had a meltdown when he found out. I transferred the trusty power of attorney to a lawyer. So even my grandparents' estate is now completely locked out of his reach. They're not doing great financially without Celia bankrolling everything. They're starting to feel what it's like to actually live within their means. They had to cancel the cruise, sell the new car. There were rumors through my aunt that they were looking into reverse mortgages, but, honestly, not my problem. The last message I ever got from them was a group email titled Family is Forever. It was 2 paragraphs of emotional manipulation, half-baked apologies and a classy little jab at the end. We raised you better than this. I didn't respond, just archived it and poured myself a coffee in my workshop while looking over the blueprints for my next property. Funny how success looks different when no one's telling you what it should look like. Also, the family achievement wall. My grandparents replaced half the pictures. Now there's one of Celia in scrubs and one of me standing in front of my first building with a sold sign. Grandpa framed it himself. I guess if there's a moral here, it's this: bet against the quiet ones long enough and eventually they'll stop playing by your rules and build their own damn scoreboard. Peace, Marcus, your friendly neighborhood disappointment, who also just hit 6 figures in monthly revenue. But what do I know? I still drive a Civic.